Ooh.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to give it about 90 seconds to let the room fill up a little bit more, let people join. I know you're probably just coming off of lunch if you're on the East Coast. So get out of that food coma ASAP, just so you can enjoy this conversation. But yeah, we'll give it another 60 to 90 seconds. So Srishti, is their office all graffitied out, similar to the stores? Is that just like
It
that's
looks
the
like
vibe?
you're just walking into our office and like every one of us has like a fun cutout and everything. It's great. Like all our offices are like fully decked out.
It's
Amazing. Do you get to choose?
Yeah. So
What did you choose?
my favorite is it's this ridiculous rubber chicken with like you know how on the trucks they have those like rubber duckies and things just taped on?
Yeah.
It just cracks me up. I don't know why I find it so funny, but like it's the one thing that I just keep like cracking up about. But we've got people who've got like Jim's office. It's basically him with his two golden retrievers. They're so cute. They're built like tanks. Those dogs.
Doesn't he have 4 kids?
Yeah.
He's got the dogs, not the kids on the wall.
It's always the dogs that.
That's amazing. I know that chicken because I think Jim and James were handing him out at a conference once, and I brought 2 of them home for each of my kids. And I would tell you, I would wake up at 2:30 in the morning and be like, they'd be squeezing it. They would just wake up and start doing it. And my wife was like, "Oh my God, yep, that's the one." Not it didn't have the outfit, but yeah. So we moved over the summer, so my wife conveniently lost them. She was like, "Oh, I don't know. I guess they didn't make it in the move." So
We'll just send a few more. No worries.
yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. All right, let's get rolling here. It's good to see everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Abhinav Kapur, co-founder and CEO of Bikky. We are a customer data platform for restaurants. Our goal is to help restaurants capture all their guest data across point of sale, payments, online ordering, loyalty, like our partners here at PAR. Pull it all together, map the entire customer journey so that when you pull a lever to grow the business on the marketing side, on the menu side, on the ops side, we can help you measure the incrementality of that decision. We are here today with Bess from PAR and Srishti from Dave's Hot Chicken. I'll kick it over to them shortly to do their intros. But for those of you tuning in, the title of this one is Inside Dave's Hot Chicken, Data-Driven Guest Engagement and Menu Strategy. So appreciate you all being here. As a housekeeping note, we will talk for about the next 40 to 45 minutes. We'll do some audience Q&A at the end. There is a little questions button in the bottom right of the platform. Throughout the conversation, feel free, drop in your questions, drop them in the queue, and we'll take them one by one at the end. And without any further ado, I'll pass it off to my partner in crime here, Bess Renn. Bess, please take it away.
All right. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Bess. I manage our customer success team here at Punch and at PAR. Really excited a little bit about PAR and kind of my role over here. I have the privilege of working hand in hand with our restaurants as a strategic partner. So that means, my focus is really helping get to the absolute most out of your loyalty program, whether it's making sure you're running the right campaigns, you're innovating, you're leveraging best practices, driving measurable growth, and lots of fun things happening over here at PAR Engagement with our PAR ordering as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass it over to Srishti to do a quick introduction on her end.
Sure. So I'm Srishti. I'm the Senior Marketing Director at Dave's Hot Chicken. Been here for 4 years. Obviously, that's been like hypergrowth stage. When I started, we were at 20 restaurants. Now, as of today, we're at 352. I think, don't quote me on that. It could be 51 also. But crazy growth. Obviously, we've had the most incredible partners to help us along the way. So very excited to share some insights.
Amazing. And just in terms of the program here for everybody watching, I'm going to pass it over to Bess first to talk about her work with Srishti and the Dave's team and their approach to engagement. That'll be about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll kick it back over to me, and we'll take over and start talking about LTOs, menu innovation, all that good stuff, and then we'll turn it over to Q&A from there. So with that being said, I'll step aside. Bess, once again, please take it away.
All right, let's do it. Okay. So as Abhinav said, really going to chat a lot today about the partnership between PAR Engagement and Dave's Hot Chicken. Quick foundation. I kind of mentioned a little bit about what PAR engagement is. Super high level, it's that unified guest engagement platform. It's a solution that a lot of modern restaurants are trusting to grow their loyalty. Something we'll talk about today is increasing visit frequency, optimizing your campaigns with data like that you get from Bikky. For Dave's Hot Chicken, we actually started our partnership back in 2021 with quite literally just 10 locations. And like Srishti said, we've grown to over 340 plus on the platform, which is just astounding growth. And really the partnership we have with Dave's Hot Chicken is going beyond technology. It's really helping Srishti and her team accelerate that guest activation, driving digital adoption, and then making sure every campaign is fine-tuned to deliver that measurable value that we're all looking for. So the two big themes I kind of alluded to that we're going to chat about today are that guest activation and the guest frequency. So starting first on that guest activation side, we know that the truth is that if we don't get guests to engage in those first 7 to 14 days after they sign up, it's incredibly hard to build lasting loyalty. So that early engagement that you have is going to compress that time to that really crucial second visit, and then also create long-term habits. Now, from Dave's Hot Chicken side of the house, they really leaned into it. And when I say really leaned into it, I really truly mean it. In Q2 of this year, they onboarded over, and get this, 250,000 new loyalty signups, which was a 62% year-over-year increase. And that type of acceleration doesn't happen by accident. It comes from really intentional onboarding strategies and alignment across the whole business. So with that in mind, I'd love for Srishti to expand here. I just want to hear a little bit about how you approached guest onboarding, what kind of specific steps you took, both in store and from a marketing perspective, that helped you turn those signups into first and second purchases so quickly.
Right. So, one of the quickest and simplest reasons behind that is obviously the brand has a lot of cultural relevance and excitement. We also understand our guests really well. So we know that, some of the more traditional, like let's bombard them with emails and discounts is not discounts would probably work, but we don't want to get into that. But, we don't want to be bombarding them with one email every single day, 100 times a day kind of thing. So it really comes down to what is that, as Bess said, intentional way of engaging them. And it's very simply, we know the kind of fandom we have. And so it's quickly followed by you followed us on social. Why don't you also download the app? It's going to make your life simpler. It's also going to get you more Daves more quicker, right? And that's really one of the underpinnings of everything that we do. So for the sake of, we knew that the summertime is always a little challenging. People are on vacation, they're distracted, they're not necessarily, Dave's is always at the center of my life, but it may not be at the center of everybody else's. And so how do we, just re-engage people and get them excited? And so that's where we developed this. We also knew from a lot of the insights work that we've done that our customer, Gen Z Alpha, they're snacking more often, right? And they're not necessarily, this is my breakfast, this is my lunch, this is my dinner. And capturing those snack occasions was very important to us. And it's the summer, obviously, that's the only time in your life you're kind of like able to access food even at 4 a.m. without the repercussions of what happens when you get older. And so it was, that's where we took that insight and created this Dave's After Dark campaign, which was really aligned and centered around the after dinner hours. But it was all through the app. So it was only, you could get certain incentives, you could get certain discounts, but you had to go to the store and order through the app. And so the app was the central sort of point of that, which helped us, ultimately get more usage, get more frequency. And we did it for 10 weeks. And every single week was a well thought out, integrated campaign. We had a landing page. We had cool glow in the dark stickers with just a QR code that took you right to the app. So it was very 360 in that way, but it was all about, and we had glow in the dark shoelaces, which if anybody wants, we have some of those left also. But it was just all in service of getting those app downloads and getting that app usage.
I was going to say, I might have to hit you up for some glow in the dark shoelaces. It sounds right up my alley. One thing you called out that I want to touch on is how you incorporated socials into kind of the whole atmosphere. It's kind of like I said, it's alignment across the whole business. It's not just your loyalty program and sending out those emails there. It's the socials, it's the operational piece, those stickers that you kind of have and can easily give out. So love that you touched on that. Might ask you for some stickers too, because that sounds pretty great. Lovely. Okay. Kind of pivoting a little bit into frequency. So I know we've touched on it a little bit, kind of getting those guests to come in with that Dave's After Dark. It's no surprise. Every brand wants more visits. And the challenge is doing that sustainably. You kind of alluded to it a little bit with kind of discounting. But we want to get that sustainable growth without really training our guests to respond to bigger discounts. I know that the Dave's team grew loyalty sales almost 13% quarter over quarter, while actually lowering your average discount rate to right about 5.5%. Pretty impressive. And even more impressive, I also know that your frequency increased across all cohorts. So guests who are visiting twice a quarter, all the way up to 11 plus times a quarter. We know that you guys are having that growth. It's a really powerful outcome. So I want to explore a little bit and hear you talk about how you diversified your campaign mix. It sounds like you kind of already did some of that with your Days After the Dark, so you can lean into there. I also want to talk about what kind of campaigns are really resonating most with your guests, and how did you balance those kind of like larger hero offers with more personalized, like data-driven incentives. So would love your kind of thoughts on that.
So for just getting that repeat frequency, one of the things that I think we've done really well is that we're able to always, whatever we're designing is either from the objective of a new product launch. So it's to get that trial of the product. And even if you have to incentivize it with that product, it's just a way to get people through the door to try it. We always try and do it against the minimum purchase. So there's no, it's not straight up discounting because, like, to your point, it's not going to help the bottom line at that point, right? And we don't want to train a guest to come back only for discount-led occasions. So we try and mix it in a way where there is a little bit of an entry-level item that gets you excited to come and make that first or second purchase. But then thereafter, it's a lot about, we have a fairly simplified menu. So we kind of understand that you're going to order one of 7 spice levels. And you're probably going to be very consistent about it, but how do you gamify it? How do you make people excited to come in and try maybe another spice level, and how do you incentivize them to take that action so that they get their points to stack up faster so that they can get more Daves? And that's, like I said before, one of the key tenets of what we do is more Daves more soon, or more Daves more quicker kind of thing. But it really does tend to work because, again, the kind of offers the kind of tiers that we have are really well designed to not only get you that frequency, but it's a high enough ticket that it's not affecting your overall like profitability.
Nice. I love that. And just for the group, what are kind of the layout of those tiers, just so we're kind of like all on the same page?
Mm-hmm. And I think, so the first one is, should have probably done, I think the first one is pretty approachable because I think it's against probably a minimum $30 purchase, right? Which you can probably get in 2 visits. And that makes, and that gets you at least a beverage. We don't have beverages as a part of our combos because we don't call them combos. And there's a reason behind that, which we'll get into later. But you're able to, within 2 visits, get a beverage or an additional like richer side of your choice. The 600 is, I think, even bigger sides and better sides. And then the 1200 is like the grand prize, if you will. And that's essentially about $120, which could probably be 4 visits or so. And you get an additional combo. One of the things that we're really excited about doing is also creating a more experiential tier over time, because it's great to get your food. It's great to get you discounts. But, some of that we've leveraged over the past few months and we've tested is how do we create more excitement about those experiential events? And that's really, sort of harnessing like the most loyal customers and just amplifying whatever we're launching and making an event out of it, making them like the, the chief guest or whatever, and that kind of thing. And really making them feel special, because this is what we've learned in our social media. It's about a two-way communication. It's about building that community. It's building that excitement. And that really is something that we're trying to translate, even if it's digital. Ultimately, how we translate that into the stores is what's really important and meaningful for us.
Yeah, I was about to say, your stores and your in-store crews, those are the most one-to-one contact you have with your guests. And it's really true. You create lasting relationships with these guests that you feel like are kind of going beyond loyalty. It's that experiential piece, having them understand you and your brand voice. So I think that's really amazing. Appreciate all the insights you've given me. I definitely want to give Abhinav some time to ask some questions. I know that he has some great questions about the menu. So I'm going to turn it over to y'all now.
Amazing. Thanks, Bess. Appreciate you and Srishti taking us through the tour of how y'all have made the loyalty platform so effective for Days. Srishti, zooming out a little bit, I think one of the things that when we were prepping for this that you shared that was interesting was just kind of your perspective on the consumer environment. I think, like, as you mentioned at the top, like Dave's has been on a rocket ship. 20 stores when you started and around 350 today. Can you talk about maybe just the brand principles and the keys to success that have enabled y'all to grow that aggressively? Like, what is it, if you think at a fundamental level, that really makes Dave such a hit with its audience and with its consumers?
Yeah, they don't let us go home at night, so we work 24 hours, and that's been really helpful.
That's why they let you put graffiti on the walls. Is because they want you to feel like at least you have a choice here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really, I think ultimately what it comes down to is that we built a brand based on, and we say this ad nauseum at this point, so I know people are going to be like, oh my God, again, but it really is based on authenticity. And that's true for every single touch point and consumer touch point that we have, but it's also true for our culture. And one of the things I think that's just built, it's almost like a flywheel in a way, because our social media has really been a huge driver of growth for us. It's been a huge driver of awareness for us. And that's really the thing that's built this fandom into something that I think was unexpected for everybody. But like I said, it's because it's a two-way conversation. It's not just about us talking to the right. And it's more about, we'll get messages like, my girlfriend threw my Dave's out by accident. What do I do? And it's like some stupid thing like, oh, break up with her. It's time to leave her. But people feel incredibly validated and special that you're having that conversation with them. And that, I think, is one of the greatest drivers of our success. The other is, I think you have to have the confidence in knowing that it's not always about loyalty. Does not equal discounts. It just doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of brands sometimes conflate the two, and it just doesn't make sense, because if you're training your guests to come back only on a discount occasion, it's never going to be a long-lasting relationship.
Right.
It's always very it's always, you really want to do that in the moment, and you're like, oh my God, the economy sucks right now, our sales are falling, the sky is falling, everything's gone to shit, all that. Excuse me.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. This is a safe space. It's all good. Yeah.
Me and my two best friends. But we just wanted to, we don't want to create that cycle, because it's incredibly hard to break out of. And once we'll have to do it again next year and the year after and the year after. And it just doesn't make sense. And I think it really, one of the things we had discussed was this value perception, which, I think it doesn't just mean a dollar amount. Value really means you get what you paid for. And as long as the portion sizes are gigantic, because I think we call them sliders. That's really misleading. It's not a slider. It's a giant ass, a burger or sandwich or whatever you want to call it. And you get 2 of those for $15 with, enough fries. Like, I don't know how many people are hungry after that.
Yeah.
Well, it really is about creating, what is your definition of value for your brand, and how do you portray that to the end consumer? I think is really important.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think there's a couple threads that you said there, which is over discounting or just leaning only into discounts actually makes it transactional rather than a relationship. I think that's one great thread. And then I think the second piece too of this, an operator told me last year that, like, price is the easiest lever to pull when you're trying to prove value. But to exactly what you said, value is, it's the portion size, it's the quality of the food, the taste of the food, the quality of the service, and the experience. It's those, 5 things wrapped into one, which influences the guest perception of value. And I think if we think about where the current environment is, you're right, it is challenged, right? I think we did a survey of about like 45 CMOs recently, and the only answer where it was the vast majority of people, I think it was like 2/3 of people that said what they're worried about in the back half of the year. I think it was 65% of people was shifts in consumer spending, right? Effectively leading to declining traffic. I mean, I think from that perspective, as you think about, through the end of the year, heading into 2026, what is your guys' internal perspective on macro, on the consumer environment, and how you think about maintaining consumer attention? Because I think you do that so well. And then the reason I ask that is there's some very specific threads in our menu innovation conversation, which I think we'll pick up from there. But yeah, would love to understand again, like through the back or through the end of the year and early 2026, how you guys think about the consumer environment and the traffic environment.
Yeah, I wish I could say it's not all doom and gloom. It really is right now, and that is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about that. But I think, again, it comes down to, from a brand side, it comes down to having the confidence to hold on and not cave in every time, you're like, oh no, sales are falling. I think the other thing, and this is something that we're trying to drive home very, very strongly, it's not just our opinion, it's really based on everything we're hearing about around us, everything that's happening on all the larger trends in the industry. But people call me negative when I say this, but it really is. Flat is the new positive. It's not negative. It's just
flat's the new up.
Yeah. And so, as long as you're able to maintain that without discounting, because if we're all going to discount like crazy, and it is a price war right now, right? Everybody's kind of like, here's a 38-cent burger. I don't know how they do that, because I don't know. I don't want to get into it, but I don't know. But
that's the next webinar. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
But it's not going to be long-term. It's not going to be long-term profitable for anybody, but it's also this is just one of those guest visits that's really, to your point, transactional. There's no value add to it. So when we think about how the next few months look, obviously everybody's, we're still up. So I just want to make sure that's we've done a lot of work. But it's, there's certain buckets that you have to look at in terms of how do you re-engage guests, right? Partly, is it you stay culturally relevant? Yes, we've done a great job of that. But, we always talk about this internally. Everybody has the same barrier to entry, which is social media. Everybody has the same sort of, attention span, and every brand is fighting for that at the same time. And so how do you stay in that relevance cycle is really through a lot of product innovation. In our case, the product innovation is well thought out. We're very mindful of how we do it. It's not just for the sake of let's launch something tomorrow and just do it. We do a lot of testing. We have great partners who help us with the validation of that testing. Bikky. But it's pre-planned. We have a long pipeline of that testing and that product innovation pipeline, and we do it in a thoughtful way so that we're able to get those moments of like excitement throughout the year without discounting and without it's approaching it with creativity as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, for those of you who are dropping in questions, thank you so much. We have a ton of questions. I promise you we will get to those in about 20 minutes or so. But I think, Srishti, something that you said that where you talked about the role of menu innovation, I also think, and this is probably one of the most underrated aspects of not just Dave's, but really a lot of the brands that we see having success. Again, this is my perspective, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's like a really tight, focused core menu that your team, again, we talked about how to deliver value. It's consistency, it's quality, it's speed, right? Because the menu is so tight, the teams are phenomenally well trained on just executing those 10-ish core items day in and day out. And I think that's the foundation and the platform for doing creative menu innovation that stands out and actually gives the guest a reason to consistently engage with the brand if they're not necessarily craving hot chicken every single day or every single week. Is that the right way to think about it? Is like that tight core menu is the platform, and then that gives you sort of the creative license to do something maybe a little bit more out there when it comes to the menu innovation?
Yeah, and I think one of the easiest ways for us to do that, and I know we're going to say this, but it's really what we're seeing around us is that it's really leverage your beverage, right? And leverage that beverage program and just sort of do it in a way that is easy operationally, is not very expensive, is not expensive for the end customer, but you get people talking about it. It's on social. We've launched our Poppin' Bobas with our slushers. Our slushers are just basically Slurpees or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And it just has the boba on top. And it's super simple, super incremental. Took off on social like we never imagined, because suddenly people were putting on it on their chicken, on their mac and cheese.
Wow.
It's like, you do you, if that's what, if that works, that works. And it did work because it got that excitement, but it also got us additional visits and it got us incremental sales. And this is something that we saw across all our platforms, was that people were trading up, right? And so even if you're buying it only once or twice, it's almost equivalent to the price of like our, value meal or base item. And so it's really important to do that, because you're not affecting your core menu. We're incredibly protective of our core menu. We're very protective of how we're positioning ourselves. We're not going to start, a beef burger or something crazy like that today. It might change in the future. But allowing us to focus on just our beverages really gives us that opportunity to create excitement, to create fun, to create trial, and to create traffic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, you jumped into it where we talked about leveraging the beverage and I think that's a perfect place, because that's something that, Bikky and Dave's have worked on together, was proving the incrementality of a lot of your menu launches. So maybe we focus on slushers and bursties. You can't, my dad's a 7-Eleven franchisee, so you got to be careful when you drop Slurpees. I start texting him and be like, I'm trademark, but, so let's call them slushers. They're slushers. And so when we think about beverage and leverage the beverage, I guess the first question is why, especially in this environment. You mentioned a little bit around trade up, mentioned a little bit about traffic. Why are beverages a great place for innovation in the current environment? And why did you look to that? Because I think you guys have done a little bit of beverage innovation in the past with top loaded shakes, but why did you come back to beverage specifically this time around?
Because ultimately what it does is it gives people just that illusion of choice in a way, but it's also something that's newsworthy every single time, whether you're doing it as a cereal, whether you're doing it as a boba, it's fun, it's bright, it's colorful. There's multiple opportunities to mix and match flavors. And everything that we're seeing around us, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, sometimes you just want an affordable treat, right? Yeah. You just want a $3 or $5 or $6 treat where you're not necessarily looking. And it also ties in very nicely to those snacking occasions, right? Where you're just coming in and you're just getting a simple drink. It's bright, it's eye-catching. And those are flavor bombs. Like, I don't think anybody above the age of 25 can realistically drink one of those, but that's okay. It's okay. We're not asking you to, but it just gives you a sense of discovery. It gives you a sense of excitement, and it gets people talking about it. And it's really one of the things I love talking about, which is really stupid and not even relevant to this, is the lipstick index. But for people who don't know, when the economy is kind of like not doing that well, lipstick sales go up. It's because it's a sweet little indulgence. It's not very
interesting.
You feel good about yourself. You get that instant like dopamine hit, and that's really what drinks are for us. So they're kind of our lipstick index in a way.
I love that. I've never heard that. That's amazing. That's awesome. I love that analogy. That's great. That's like when you said lipstick index, I also thought of, in a much different context, like the Department of Defense pizza tracker. Have you seen this? Where it's like pizza sales at late night, like skyrocket, and then something like the Department of Defense announces something the next day. Which is obviously very different from a lipstick index, but yeah, that's so interesting.
But I think in this case is just because they're giving it out for $6.99.
Right, that could it's it's the promotional environment for sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how you guys tested slushers, Versties, and beverages. Can you talk a little bit, because I think you guys are very thoughtful in terms of where you test and how you test and what you test. So maybe just set the stage a little bit. What was the initial, what markets or stores, what were you looking for when you were initially testing the beverage innovation?
Right. So we like to keep a broad range of markets in mind, just because, what might work in Southern California may not work in the Midwest. And so we sort of like spread it out evenly across certain markets just to get a great sort of like profile mix right in place. The other thing that we do is we tend to do it in multiple steps so that we're able to really assess at each level how the product is performing. We have an internal sort of number that we look at, and if it's not that number by week 4 or week 6, you kill it. That's it. You go fast, you move on, it's done, it's over. And that's one of the reasons why drinks are so much easier, is because you can really add on to it as much as you want, test it out a bit, and then just be like, okay, it didn't work, move on. With Bursties, especially because we already have a great slushers infrastructure. It's sort of also figuring out what is a product that you can put across different product, categories without really affecting the flavor and the taste and things like that. And so that's how we landed on the Bursties. And again, we hit the initial number fairly quickly. And so there was, it was kind of like, oh, there's something to this. Let's just put it out there. It's anyway an LTO. It's not going to be something that's going to take you through like Q4. And again, every time we run something, we always come to our partners at Bikky to ask how it's working, because one of the things is like, you might have a great feeling, you might have a great vibe, you might have something, but if you don't have the data to back it up, you're not going to be able to make really good decisions. And so, we always ultimately go back to the data. We're looking at what is the incrementality? What is the traffic? Did we acquire new guests through this? Did the average check size go up, which is kind of the incrementality piece of it? And we're looking at all those levers and just seeing, is it a yes or a no? And you get the opportunity, even if you have 400, 500, 1,000 stores across the world, to be able to make that decision in 4 to 6 weeks, I think is really, truly empowering.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think like you did a great job of kind of setting the stage of what the milestones need to be to call something a success. Maybe I get as much as comfortable as you are in terms of willing to share some of the details here, but what were those checkpoints, and what was what were some of the learnings in the test markets around incrementality, around new guests, around average check that you feel like you could share? Because I think that's the thing that, typically P-mix, of course, people look at percentage of mix, and you want to use that to sort of, especially in a franchise-based concept, you want to use that to prove that you have a hit on your hands and prove to the franchisees why they should be investing the time, resources, marketing attention to promote that item. But I guess, how has the scorecard, for lack of a better term, evolved since we've been partnering together? And then what are some of the, the milestones that you look at to gauge the incrementality of an item?
I think, if anything, having the kind of data that you guys provide has helped us be a little more open to innovating even more. We've always been very committed to maintaining a very tight menu, and that's partly because why increase operational difficulties when you don't have to, right? And why do it for the sake of doing it? And it's just helped us really be a little more disciplined in terms of what that pipeline looks like. Using, some of the Bikky data has been really helpful in when we launched our cauliflower, for example, right? That was the first big product innovation that we ever did. It wasn't chicken, it was obviously cauliflower. And some of the insights, to your point, the P-mix gives you a very black or white decision, but then you start digging into the nuance of it, right? Because the P-mix would have been like, oh, it was X%. And it's like, well, that's not great. But that's where we sort of dug into the data a little bit more. And some of the, insights that we got were very surprising in terms of, maybe somebody came in and bought it once, right? Then they came back and they started eating chicken. So you still got somebody through the door, you got initial trial, and now you have a customer that's coming and exploring the rest of your menu, right? we would have never known that. Or that, there's a family of 5 where one person is vegetarian, they will never come to Dave's Hot Chicken.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've reduced that veto vote is gone because now everybody can come and eat at Dave's Hot Chicken, which means you've just had 5 incremental visits if you think about it in a way,
Yeah.
right? Which you would have never had in the past. And that kind of nuance, I think, is really important to the decision-making process, because without that, you're just operating basically in a silo, right? You're just looking at this one number and one data point and saying, okay, you know what, it's a fail. And so you really, it's very important to approach any product innovation or product launch with those kind of sort of like set of questions, instead of like, what is the outcome that you're seeking here, and what will help you make the next decision to really let this out in the wild.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. No, I think it's very well said, where it's just like, the line that I'm starting to use is like, the PMix is the most political report in the restaurant business, because 2 people can look at the same data and have different opinions. And that's basically like how I think about the PMix. But from I guess like when we like tie it back to slushers and bursties, like what did that do to the beverage category? Just so we can like draw a line under that innovation. What did that do for your beverage sales or the beverage category overall after you guys ran that test?
I think my favorite piece of that was the fact that we actually saw people trading up. So initially, when we looked at the data, there was a little bit of, admittedly, I was confused and I was like, oh my God, we're losing sales in slushers. No, we weren't. We were actually gaining. So it was more incremental. And yes, there was a little bit of a, move away, but the slusher is your base product. Now people are adding onto it.
Adding on top of it, yeah.
50% increase in your, in your better priced item. That is incredible.
Yeah.
That kind of trade up, that is the kind of thing you want to talk about all day, every day, and tell the entire world, like, oh my God, that was a raging success.
Yeah, I mean, hence why this webinar was born. So there you go. So you are telling the world. But yeah, but I thought when I was looking at the data, I had the same reaction where it's like, oh my God, slusher standalone sales are down. I think it was like 5% or something like that. But then it was like slushers plus bursties was up. What was the stat that you shared just now?
It's a made up number, but let's just go with 60%.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, it was double digits, and it was just like, oh shit, this is yeah, amazing. And then and then tying back our friends at Par here, when you have a hit like that on your hands, and it's working in test, how are you scaling out the messaging and then driving that kind of incrementality, not just in your test markets, but across the base? How are you putting the message out on social? How are you leveraging things like your loyalty program? Maybe talk us through what the promotion plan and the scale up plan looks like from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, it's always, we like to do a little bit of a soft launch. And again, that's another great time to re-engage our guests and our loyalty guests. And that's where we sort of, you are the people who've taken the time out to download my app, right? You're the people who've taken the time to read my email. You should be rewarded for that. You are the people who've made those purchases and those commitments. You could have gone anywhere. And so for those kind of launches, we always want to honor those people first, right? And really give them the opportunity to get it before everybody else. Every brand does that, so it's not something that's like crazy unique that we've done. But again, we're able to take that one product and utilize it to our advantage across multiple touch points, whether that's our email, whether that's our in-app messaging, whether that's our homepage, whether that's our social. And then, at some point, you also want to increase that trial by just rewarding the customer with it, right? So that's where, the app comes in and you drop it into the app, and then you can also see the success of the product initially and the interest levels in the product just by doing that, right? Yeah. And awesome. Make sure it's at every single touch point for sure.
That's right. That's great. Yeah. When like shout it from the rooftops when you got that hit on your hand. No, it's great. And then I guess zooming back out before we head into the Q&A part, I guess, assume you're never going to talk to any of these people ever again. You and I are never going to have a conversation again. And these are the last words that they'll ever hear from you. If you were to leave them with 1 or 2 points around menu innovation specifically, I guess, what are the sort of 1 or 2 non-negotiables that you have around menu innovation that you want to share with folks?
For us, it really is the operational efficiency. And I used to, it's really funny because if you talk to marketing, that's me, we're always like, let's do this and this and this and this. And then you talk to them and they're like, no. I used to be really upset about that. And I was like, what is their problem? I get it now. If you're at 500 stores, if you can barely roll it out internally, you're never successfully rolling it out across the system. And so it has to be something that is so easy that even I could do it as somebody who doesn't work at the restaurant, but thinks of all these stupid ideas behind my desk. Of the cloud bullshit. One of those things where you really need to be at the restaurant level and at their, and see what is possible there. And I think you have to back it up with the data because, again, like I said, it can't be good vibes and just feelings. It has to be real numbers because those are ultimately the things that will help you make really clear and concise decisions, which you wouldn't be able to otherwise.
Love that. Thank you. Seriously. And for those of you who have dropped in questions, I learned today, just given the number of questions we have, that there is an upvote feature built into the platform. And so a few of these questions have been upvoted. So we're gonna tackle those one by one. Bess, thank you so much for allowing me to have the stage here, but I want to call you back up here. First question, how have you found success with bridging the gap between operators and marketing so that staff can be the voice to the guest? We all know operators have a billion things to do, and sometimes, unfortunately, marketing campaigns and materials, etc., may not be prioritized as highly, for example. So I think you talked about it a little bit, which was meeting operations where they are, but maybe expand on that a little bit. What are some other things that you have found that have worked to drive alignment between marketing and ops?
I think obviously being friends with ops is very important because if you don't, you're gonna be shut down very quickly. I think it's also about I think really it's about being sympathetic to what they're saying and to understand that it's not from a place of ego. It really is it's from a place of just execution. And if you can't execute it, your product's gonna be dead before you even launch it. And so that's a waste of everybody's time. The other thing is, and this is very close to our hearts right now, is that we're trying to give visibility to the restaurant, to the customers, to the operators, to each other in terms of what is going well, what is not going well. And that feedback loop and that open communication is incredibly important for the success of any product and its launch.
Yeah. I think the way I always think about it is like marketing makes the promise and ops keeps the promise. And if they're the people that are keeping the promise, you want to make sure that they can do everything they can to make sure that the guest, which is the most important thing, has that consistent experience and a good experience as often as possible. Yeah, well said. This is a really good one. Do you have any tips for breaking the discounting cycle when your top competitors are also in this cycle?
Yes, don't do it. Just don't do it. I think
just don't discount.
Just don't discount. No, that would be the easiest thing. I think that's where the confidence comes in. I think that's where you have to figure out what those occasions are to talk to people and what those occasions are to bring them in an interesting way where it's not just like, here's $50 or 50% off or whatever. I think it's also important to try and leverage some of your lower priced items just to get them through the door, but don't discount your core menu items because what is the point? If you're not valuing your product, neither is your guest.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned this. I was thinking about this in the context of McDonald's now doing bundles on their core items.
Yeah.
And the thing that, and this was like right after their earnings, and then Taco Bell reported earnings. Yeah. And you look at Taco Bell and you look at their menu, and I think it is the only menu in like mega QSR where they don't discount on core items, number one. Number two, you can actually trade up and down the menu regardless of your occasion. So if you just want a bean burrito for $1.99, you can do that. If you want a crunch box with, a cheesy gordita crunch and a beverage and the potatoes, speaking from experience with the kids, that's what I think about. The problem is my 7-year-old for his birthday wanted to go to Taco Bell. He loves Taco Bell. And as a vegetarian, it's one of the few fast foods that you can actually eat. So you could sub beans for anything. So there's some experience here, but as I think about like their menu construction, again, like you can trade up and down. And then on top of that, they layer in really good marketing promotions or menu innovation with Chicken Cantina or now the Nostalgic Decades, where again, it's like to your point, the integrity of the core menu is preserved, and then they are leveraging all sorts of innovation outside that to give people more reasons to visit, which I think is, this is the stuff I think about when I'm driving them to Taco Bell. I'm like, why are we going here again? It's like, oh, right, literally, like, it's just super flexible. So I think that's well said. Next question here. Is there a way you balance national/brand-wide promotions versus targeted promotions based on customer behavior? Good question.
Oh, that's a good one. Typically, when we try to do promotions, it's mostly just national. And that gives us because in our case, how do I put this? We have, whatever we do, we want to do it so that everybody benefits. The time, if you can't benefit because, you may not, it's not applicable in Canada, for example, that's different. But when we do it, if we're putting so much time, effort, energy behind it, we want it to be a consistent experience across the spectrum instead of, trying to like pinpoint it or, sort of like reduce the impact.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I guess to like go a little bit deeper on that, Bess, if you had something, you can jump in as well.
Yeah, I was going to say there is about 1,000,000,002 ways that you can target based on customer behavior, your frequency, your AOV, LTV. There's a million ways to do that. Whereas your national campaigns, to Sristi's point, you want to make sure it's timely, it makes sense. And it's the exact same thought process for those personalized offers. So it's way easier to get those up off the ground. They're going to much smaller groups. You can see much faster ROI on those types of campaigns because, once again, you're timely, it makes sense, it's personalized, which that's the way loyalty is heading. It's personalized and it's engaging. So I think, Srishti kind of hit it head on, is that, you have those national brand-wide promotions that make sense for you and your brand voice that everyone benefits from, but then you really hyper-focus some of your more nuanced campaigns on a more regular basis to make them feel really personalized. So I think spot on.
Great insight. And I think to your point, Bess, even the like I mentioned that CMO survey that we did, we just wrapped up, and I've been looking through the results, and again, like one of the overwhelming we had a question that was like, in 2026, winning CMOs will, and I think 40% of responses were in some form of like being data driven, being increasingly personalized, and tailoring comms and offers to the individual guest and their behavior, which I know is something that our platforms support really well together, which is excellent. We'll keep rolling here. We'll do a few more here because I know Srishti's probably exhausted by now of hearing my voice, at least. She's like, I want to get back to my graffitied office where I need to work 24/7 to support the growth of this brand.
I'm not getting lunch because of this today.
That's right. What tech or tools do you use to track guests who are active on social media and active transactional guests? Interesting. So this question has come up too in my conversations with other brands. Is there anything that you do to tie maybe a social media follower or engagement to a transaction? And then I know, of course, like there's some work that we do together to track guests who are actually transacting at the brand.
So we mostly focus on the guests that you guys track for us. We're still working through some of that, and that's a great question. And it's a little bit of how do you get attribution from these 6 million social media followers that you have, right? And that's something that, for a number of reasons is currently not very easy, but we're working through some of those, brand lift studies. We're working through some of those foot traffic studies. After exposure, how many people went in, what did they get, how do you tie it back to the credit card data, all those kind of things. And so, I don't have a great answer for that right now, but if somebody does, please get in touch, because except the salespeople, please don't talk to me. But
I think it's very hard. Like I don't know, not to say we've looked into it, but I haven't heard of a way to be able to tie like a follower to a transaction. To your point, something that like the brands we work with look at is, if I'm running ads, what is like the lift in new guests, right, per store per week, as an example. And it's not one-to-one, but it gives you a directional sense.
That's typically how we look at it also, but there's no real way to say all 6 million of our followers are also, most likely they are, I'd like to believe, But
Yeah. Good. So this is a good question. What's the single most critical data point or customer behavior metric that Dave's Hot Chicken uses to prove that a new franchisee is successfully replicating the core brand experience, driving loyalty, not just initial trial?
so, I mean, if you really zoom into it, it's really about just looking at that customer data and seeing what their frequency is, right? It just comes back to
Yeah.
frequency. Could the frequency be because of all the quantitative or qualitative aspect? Sure. But essentially, if you have enough frequency, or if that person is coming back maybe 4 times versus, the benchmark, 4 times a month versus the benchmark, I would say that the franchisee is obviously doing a great job. Maybe they're lying and they're just using their credit card, but we have ways, I'm joking, we have ways to figure that out also.
I love that. Okay, we'll do two.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
it's a great question. And it's really, that's where, some of our, when we look at the Punch platform, for example, that's where we're seeing a lot of that insights.
Nice. Awesome. We'll do 2 more here. And I want to do this one because I know it'll give you an opportunity to talk about some of the stuff we were talking about before we went live. What are some types of events that work at your stores? And do you do these events nationwide or only at specific stores?
Okay, so my favorite one was when we launched mini sliders, which is a really antithetical name because our actual sliders are like sandwiches. But
Huge.
these were actually mini. These were, you get 4 little ones, and it started as a joke because everybody at our office is on Ozempic. Only half kidding. Like people. But it started off as a joke because it was kind of like, well, if you were on Ozempic or GLP-1s or whatever, you could probably be full on just one of these mini sliders. And that turned into like a joke, but it was also one of those like, why don't we? Like, what's the worst that'll happen? We pride ourselves in being a little irreverent, a little funny, a little like tongue in cheek. And so we launched this event across multiple markets, but not across the entire system. Where it was called Dave Zempic, and it's really stupid, but it's really, we had these little like syringes with Dave sauce in it. It was branded Dave Zempic. And, that was one of the first times that we really wanted to test loyalty customers. And we were like, let's just invite them. Like, it'll be an influencer event. It'll be, it'll be a fun event. We'll have celebrities, we'll have influencers, and we'll have people who are actually invested in the success of the business and are actually invested in like new product launches. And so, they were made to feel like it was like a nurse's office. Everybody was in like scrubs, like, ridiculous. Our milkshakes, our top loaded shakes were in like medicine bottles. So like you had to like pill bottles.
Oh man.
Crazy. We really leaned into it. It was super successful. And ultimately the success was obviously the lift in sales that we saw from the time it was in test to the time it launched. And it was incredible, but it was also a great way to really reward our most loyal guests.
Yeah. I love that. And I mean, like, that's only something you can do at one store, right? Am I right?
Yeah,
Or
scale up or down as much as you want.
I love that. That's amazing. That's amazing. Last one here, and we'll bring it back to sort of that age-old question of marketing and ops. How do marketing and ops leverage different operational constraints, like the square footage of the building or different layouts when they're going through menu deployment to figure out what the constraints are and actually executing on that item?
So I think some of those are a little bit of depending on where you are in your growth and where you are at that time. And if you're, some of it has to be like, we're not most likely, never say never, we'll never have a burrito, right? Because we don't have space for a tortilla press or whatever. So sometimes, I think that discipline comes from, these are the constraints and these are the things that we do have. And how do you get creative about what you're developing based on what you have versus wishful thinking? Or you start with a wishful thinking idea and then you kind of whittle it down and ops brings in the reality. And then it's like, oh, I can't do this, but I wish I could. But that's just a personal problem. It's not nobody else's.
I love it. I think over these last 55 minutes, we got a really great look, I think, at one, of course, how you guys do guest engagement and how you build your loyalty database and how you engage loyal guests and keep feeding that funnel, which is great. Two, your approach to menu innovation and how, our work together has helped you prove the incrementality of some of the innovation. And I think three, most importantly, just an inside look at your world and the things that you think up and the things that you grow through, all the way from Dave Zempic to Slushies and Bursters to really, I think, make this brand the powerhouse that it is, very candidly. Like, I think it is one of the breakaway restaurant success stories of the past few years. And this was just a fantastic look at, how, the small ways in which you've helped it achieve that level of success. So Srishti, I want to say thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. Grateful for your partnership. Bess, anything you want to add in before we wrap up here?
No, I'm just still waiting on those glow in the dark shoelaces. So
that's it. Yeah, that's the follow up.
Keep my eye out for them.
That's right. Love it. Love it. And those of you who are still watching, thank you so much for being here. For those of you that are watching the recording, appreciate you spending some time to learn more about Dave's and Pars, as well as Bikky's work with them. For all of you, thank you so much. Be well. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.
Thank you.